Welcome to The Growth Project. This is a podcast brought to you by AMPLOS. We are a performance psychology practice in Greenville, South Carolina, where we exist to optimize who you are and what you do. In simple words, we love the idea of helping you be better for the people that matter most, for the things that matter most in your life, while pursuing better, while having big dreams, while trying to accomplish and be a part of something greater than yourself. And so we try to help you find the harmony and balance between your life and your work, between your well-being and your performance. And this is becoming a little bit more of a frequent discussion. Dr. Gabby Caviedes is on the show with me today. I've enjoyed our conversations. I love the insights you're bringing. Your experiences in school are a little bit closer than mine. And so I'm enjoying our conversations. We're getting some good feedback from our listeners as well. So appreciate you being a part of this today.
Yeah, thank you. I'm always happy to be here.
Yeah, and so again, give us feedback, like us. Hopefully you're liking the new edition where we are providing some documents, a worksheet, if you will, to really support your learning. You know, we know the research suggests that you forget 42% of what you hear in the first 20 minutes and 67% in the first 24 hours. So what we're trying to do is to be relevant and to help you transfer this information from short-term to long-term. So I think it's on our YouTube page or where you might be able to find it on our website. Download the worksheet that really helps guide and support the information just to help you retain some of this knowledge. And once you're aware of this knowledge, helps you put this into practice. So today I'm a little bit excited. To me, Gabby, I think when I mentioned the topic, I'm like, I don't know how we talk about this for more than 5 minutes. But it's a question we get a lot. It's sometimes asked in a condescending way, if I'm honest, especially from a corporate perspective, but we hear it often. And I think most people are confused that probably 80% of the work we do is in the corporate space.
Right.
That they kind of label us as sports psychologists. And here's the question. Here's what's driving today's question is, how can a sports psychologist help me in the corporate world? What do they know about being a CEO? What do they know about a business organization? And so my default answer is always, well, the mental skills that make you successful in sport, make you successful in business, and make you successful in life. And that's, to me, that's the conversation. It's pretty much over after that. But that is not usually enough for people. And so when you did some research on this and really thought about what are the skills that are necessary for high performance in life and in work and in sports, and how do they overlap in this field of performance psychology?
Right. Well, we have a ton of overlap, right? And, the first thing I'll say to add to your argument when you're, standing up for what we do is that there's research to show that 68% of high-performing CEOs and executives actually were collegiate athletes. So there's clearly some degree of correlation there between skill sets you need to be successful as a collegiate athlete and then to be high performing in a corporate setting. And what we've seen in the research is some of those overlaps are high stakes decision making. You've got to be able to make decisions and make good decisions for yourself, but for the company, and in sports for yourself, but also for your teammates in order to succeed.
Yeah, I think sports to me is such a great. You were an athlete. I was a high school athlete and loved intramurals, by the way. But to me, it's always such a great microcosm of life.
It is.
Because if there's only one winner, usually at the end of the season. And it teaches you how to sacrifice. It teaches you some discipline. It teaches you to be coachable. It teaches you to handle adversity. It teaches you to handle success. It teaches you to be a part of a team and play a role in that team. And that's why I think it's such a great microcosm of life. And I didn't know that statistic that 68% of CEOs and executives played a college sport. And so why do you think there is an aversion from a corporate space to think about sports psychology or performance psychology in the corporate space? I didn't prep you for this question. I'm just curious.
You did not prep me. It's a great question. I will say I think that the way that the perception around athletes versus corporate America it's very different, right? And it's almost like in a corporate setting, you show up much more buttoned up, composed, and typically we don't see athletes that way. We see them as sometimes high emotions, very energetic. And maybe that's a role in it. I'm not quite sure, but that's the initial reaction I have is, oh, well, they're playing a game and we're in serious business.
I think it's dismissive. And I think to me, sometimes it's not really understanding the role of psychology and mental skills training. To me, I think sometimes in corporate America, they see it as a rah-rah, motivational type piece, and that's what they see as sports psychology. So I think it's somewhat misunderstood and misconstrued in the corporate space that this is serious business, and we have to focus, and we have to talk about business, and we have to talk about strategy, and we have to talk about tactics, and we have to talk about all these things that are relative to peak performance, but we're biased. But we believe the mindset precedes the skill set. That we can give you a skill and a tool to use, but if you don't have the mindset and maturity to use it effectively and efficiently, then you become dependent on us or you become dependent on other people.
Right.
And I think sports is more open to coaching because these athletes get coached in everything.
Yeah. I mean, they're used to that terminology as well. They're like, well, my coach, right?
Yes.
My head coach, my special teams coach, they're used to that verbiage, whereas in the corporate field, they're just not.
So you mentioned kind of high stakes decision making. What are some of those other shared experiences that we believe translate really well in the high performance world of corporate America, the high performance sports world that we're in as well, but also in life? What are some of those shared experiences that we think make performance psychology applicable to whatever walk of life you're in?
Yeah, well, the first is evaluation, right? Public and private, where you're being evaluated by others constantly. You're also having to self-evaluate for performance metrics. That's a huge one. I don't know if you've seen that show up in the work that you've done in the corporate setting.
Yeah, I mean, I just was at a corporate meeting last week, and the team didn't perform well, and they didn't hit the goal, they didn't hit their number, and so the feedback from the leader sounded very much like a talk from a locker room coach of, hey, we didn't play well,
right?
Oh, we didn't show up well, we didn't execute, we didn't focus, and so the language, even the terminology to me, and maybe that's just the way my mind is wired.
Right.
There's similarities in that process. I think the thing that I see that's so transferable, and I guess I've been doing this for 20 years, is they are both, and we are all held accountable to things we can't control.
Yeah.
And so in sports, I can't control winning or losing. I can influence it. In business, I can't control whether or not I hit my number. I can't control the sale. I can't control the customers. I can't control other people.
Right.
And to me, that's the most common form of stress in a high-performance world. And there's nothing more stressful than being held accountable to things you can't control.
Right.
And so understanding the mindset that it takes to be successful, to define your own success, to focus on the things you can control, to quiet your mind, quiet your body, to engage fully in the present moment, to not let the burden of expectations take away your joy, to me, is that's the commonality, that's the common thread, and to me that's part of the human experience, no matter whether you're an athlete, whether you're in business, whether you're in medicine, whether you're trying to be a parent, whether you're trying to be successful in school. Those are the commonalities that we all experience, that is part of this human experience, the good and the bad.
And the skills we coach all tie in directly to that. We're talking feedback. You were talking about how they were giving this almost locker room speech, but how you deliver that speech and what verbiage you're using, tone of voice, all of the principles around that, delivering feedback, receiving feedback, and then how do you handle pressure? What are your skills that you have for coping with demands? And all of this ties into being able to perform in settings where you don't have complete control.
Yeah, and I just got off I just did a seminar, webinar with a team on emotional intelligence.
Yep.
And Daniel Goleman's research suggests that your EQ is a greater predictor of your success than your IQ.
Yep.
And so in any profession, now he says, and his research suggests that to be a physician or to be an accountant or be an engineer, there's a certain level of IQ and maybe about one standard deviation above the norm. But once you get into the profession, your IQ has little to do with your success. It's your EQ. Well, you get along with others. Can you self-manage? Can you self-motivate? Are you aware? Are you adaptable? Can you connect? Do you have empathy? Well, the same thing we talk about in sports.
Right.
For 99% of our athletes, what I tell them all the time, the maturity has to match the talent.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Parcells, the great football coach, said talent opens the door, but character gets you through to the other side. So for us, the talent opens the door, whether that's your IQ in the business world, whether that's your athletic ability in the sports world, but the maturity to match the talent, the self-regulation, the self-management, the ability to be a part of the team, the ability to be coachable, the ability to handle success, the ability to handle failure. That's to me how I see it. And just a matter of what world you're in, what world you are in, and how you're applying these skills.
Yes, and that relationship is so fascinating to me. I always say a similar thing to my athletes: is your physical skills will get you so far in this sport.
Yes.
But when you hit a certain level, everybody's got talent, everybody's got physical ability. What's going to set you apart?
Yeah, what's going to be that competitive advantage for you?
Right.
And I think another thing that I think is just we do mainly in America more so than anything else, our identity is so tied up in what we do.
Yeah.
I mean, how many athletes do we know that their identity is so much in their athletic, but in the corporate world as well?
Right. Causes a lot of stress, a lot of frustration, because you know that's not who you are at your core. You're not just an employee, or you're not just a CEO or just a tennis player. You have other facets, and we get so locked into the one that's taking up the majority of our time that we forget to prioritize the full self.
And what my athletes, especially the ones at Clemson that are in a very highly, especially in the world we're in now, just everybody's aware and mindful with social media and access, and everybody is a critic. I always talk about, you have to ask a question: do people love me for who I am, or love me for what I do? Mm. And I think it's why the research is so profound on leaders, that loneliness is such a significant problem, because I think leaders ask that same question: do people love me for who I am, or they love me for what I do?
Yeah.
And I think these are the commonalities that really prevent us and inhibit us from being our best and doing meaningful work.
Right.
So are we missing anything, right? I mean, I'm sure we are, and kind of the similarities between sport and performance. Maybe the only other thing I would talk about is the energy it takes.
The energy it takes and the demands you experience,
Yes.
right? The literature shows it's consistent as well. I remember all of my research was actually based off of organizational psychology literature on the demands of employees in the workplace. And then you look at sports, and it's the demands they experience are the exact same, just in a different arena. So it's not that the experiences are all that different. It's just you're going from inside of a corporate building to onto the field. And that's really the main difference.
You know, we talk about the wellness wheel a lot.
Yeah.
You made me think about that: the mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, relational, behavioral. To me, one things we see in the athletic world, the physical is taken care of.
Right.
You know, when we think about exercise, athletes don't have to worry about getting exercise.
Right.
In the corporate space, it's one of the biggest weaknesses that people will sacrifice their physical health, which really influences their mental and emotional health and their relational health,
right,
because of busyness, because it's so hard. Well, the athlete, that's part of their experience. So one coping mechanism that is part of their identity, a part of their work, is physical exercise.
Right.
Now, when they're injured and we take that away, that creates another set of problems. But that's a piece that I think is a part of it. The other, well, we're talking about similarities. I think a big difference is, and this is really challenging, the football teams, the sports teams, they meet every day together.
Yeah.
They practice every day together. And a lot of the global work we do with companies is they may get together once a month. They may get together once a year. And so it's a little bit harder sometimes to build those connections. So those are a couple of things that kind of separate them. But for the most part, there's some similarities.
Exactly. The social piece is huge. I think, and especially in a team sport, you're on par there, is that you're going to have much more social interaction, probably closer relationships. But I would say in individual sport, you're looking at something much more similar to a corporate setting, where you're looking at your own performance. You may have interactions somewhat regularly with your teammates or with your coaches, but a lot of that is very inward focused. So I would almost be inclined to say that individual-based sport would mirror the corporate setting much more closely.
Yeah, and so as you're hearing us kind of summarize, kind of go through these, I would think about whether you're an athlete listening to this and how might this apply, because, I think that's important. The NCAA research, like 98% of people are going pro in something other than your sport. But if you're in corporate America and you're trying to perform at a high level at home and at work, think about what are the similarities that you experience. Maybe you played a high school sport. Maybe you understand the high performance strategies we're talking about can really enhance your life and enhance your work. And so, if you had to sum this up, how might you sum up what we just talked about here?
Well, at the end of the day, I think what we're trying to say here is that the arena changes, but the demands don't.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that line. Like where I'm showing up and what game I'm playing may change, but the demands on my mind and my body and my emotions and my stress don't.
Right.
In experiencing that, burnout is a huge problem in sports, youth sports, and it's a huge problem in the health industry. Healthcare industry is a huge problem in corporate America. Significant levels of burnout and exhaustion. So the demands of what it takes to be your best in the different roles that you play, like the arena may change, but the demands and skill sets that it takes do not.
Right.
Yeah.
Spot on.
Yeah. So good. Drop the mic. I'm over. I'm done. But we'll keep going just to kind of entertain. And so some of the things that we think transfer well.
Yeah.
Let's start with that.
Yeah. Well, the first is your processes, right? Having a process. We always say, trust the process, trust the process. However, you can't trust a process you don't have. So I always think that it's important to have routines to prepare, to control what you can control, whether that's as an athlete or as a high-performing executive, or just individual at home, your home life, your relationships, making sure that you're showing up the way you want to and having a system for that.
Yeah, and so let's understand why that is so important. So if I said it earlier, there's nothing more stressful than being held accountable to things you can't control when you can't control the outcome.
Right.
And if I don't have a process, if I can't get lost in my process, if I can't get lost in the moment, if I can't give each play or each sales call or each day a life of its own, and I'm not focused on my process, my brain is going to focus on the outcome.
Yeah. I asked a question the other day to an athlete, but then I start to ask it to myself is, what does a good performance look like to you? You say you have high standards. What are your standards? And oftentimes they can't answer that right away. And that's where you don't really know your process if you don't know the steps to obtaining.
Yeah, and so many young athletes and so many young people kind of are just hoping they're going to show up and play well, and they don't have a good process to handle success, and they have a good process to handle adversity. And so if a process orientation, that's something I can control.
Correct.
And if I'm not focusing on the things I can control, my brain just wants to constantly focus on what I cannot. Yep. What does that lead to? An increase in anxiety and a decrease in confidence. And so one of my favorite quotes that our football team sees from me each week is from Thoreau that says, "Success comes to those who are too busy to be looking for it." And so what we try to teach is it allows me, what I want to get too busy doing, getting lost in my process, controlling the things I can control, stay focused on the moment, not the magnitude of the moment, and let success find me because I'm too busy to be looking for it. Okay, so that's a quote. So then another key component is not only of what we teach, a process. What's another component that we think transfers really well?
Well, going back to your comment about EQ is emotion regulation. Yeah. How do you handle stress? How do you handle mistakes? And how resilient are you in the face of adversity? Positive emotions and negative emotions, and not letting them detract from what you need to focus on in the given moment to perform.
I spent a lot of time this fall working with our football team and our coaches at Clemson, and our head coaches at Clemson, and in a lot of corporate spaces. Even think about in my own life the difference between a reaction and a response. Mm-hmm. And we talk about we would never take away your privilege to be human and to have that reaction. It's human nature to have a negative thought, to have a negative reaction, to experience anxiety, to experience guilt, to experience fear, to experience shame. That's all part of being human. And that's a human reaction when things don't go your way. Mm-hmm. However, being human means you get to choose a response.
Yes.
And we think about that response of emotional regulation, that we get to choose that response. How do we quiet our minds? How do we quiet our bodies? And how do we have a productive response to impact my performance in a positive way?
Yeah.
And so what are some emotional regulation skills that we see in the sport world and the corporate world? What would be some things that you would recommend to people?
We typically follow a pretty simple 3-step process here where it's take a second, pause. Whatever you've experienced, it's going to elicit emotion. And like you said, allow yourself to tune into that emotion, whether it's frustration, anger, guilt, anxiety. Feel it, pause, take it in, regulate, take a deep breath, use a grounding technique, something that repositions you into the present moment, and then you can think and respond. The easiest thing to do is to experience an emotion and react. I'm angry. Okay, I'm going to yell.
Yeah.
The emotion regulation.
That's not good.
That's not the best approach. I mean, we're all guilty as charged, but the best approach would be, okay, I'm angry. I recognize that. What you just did there. Take a deep breath, right? Take a deep breath. Say, okay, how do I want to respond? And ask yourself that quickly.
And part of that emotional regulation, to me, as a cognitive psychologist, the similarities as human beings of how are my thoughts working for me or against me. We know, I don't know how many times we've talked about this, that we have between 50 and 70,000 thoughts a day, and 70% of those thoughts tend to be negative. Doesn't matter what arena I'm in, the thoughts tend to be negative.
Right.
Do I have what it takes? Is my family going to be okay? Is my marriage going to make it? We have these thoughts on a consistent basis about what we need to do, about what we have to do, about what we should do, which adds pressure, which leads to what I can't do, which leads to helplessness and hopelessness. And so part of this emotional regulation, regardless of the arena, that is the common theme that we see is, are my thoughts working for me or against me? And if my thoughts cannot be positive, how can I be productive in my thought life?
Yes.
Same thing, if the situation is negative, you can't lie to yourself. And so you get to have that reaction. You get to acknowledge that I'm angry or frustrated or fearful or anxious. But how is that thought helping you?
Right.
How is that reaction helping? And most of the time it's not.
Right.
That's what we mean by maturity matching talent. Awesome. I think the other thing is we keep going about skill sets that are transferable and transfer well. And we mentioned it like coachability.
Yes.
And here's where athletes do a better job. They may not love it, but they are used to breaking down the film. They are so exposed. Each week they get a grade. And they watch film, and they're broken down on a consistent basis about how they can get better. I always get excited. Imagine if we could do corporate America like that.
Right. It would be great. It's an advantage that sports has over the corporate setting where it makes it very easy to target the behavior, right? To target, okay, here's how I performed. I can see it. How do I need to change? Because I can see the outcome wasn't exactly what I wanted. How do I use this to get better?
And I think for some reason in corporate America, they are avoidance. They try to avoid the courageous conversations. They don't have the film. Our coach like the film doesn't lie. We don't have the film. And so we try to use 360s and we try to use these other things to where what I see in corporate America where coaches in sport, coaches get criticized all the time. They get coached all the time. They get feedback all the time. But in corporate America, we tend to shy away from it, and we dismiss the giver of the information.
Yes.
And we resent the feedback.
A lot of it, I think, comes down to the frequency as well. Sports, like you said, you're getting feedback constantly. Corporate America, we're doing what? Quarterly or semi-annual reviews,
or even
yearly.
Just yearly.
Right.
And it's a performance review. And here's where I think corporate America, that is usually tied to my compensation.
Right.
So it's really hard to separate who I am from what I do. And so if I'm getting negative feedback at the end of the year, my first thought is what's going to affect my finances,
right?
Which now leads to anxiety and stress and fear and defensiveness. Versus in sports, it may be related to my compensation, but in the moment, they're trying to get me to get better.
Right.
And I think we do get feedback, but I think sports has a leg up.
Yeah, and we're not saying that sports is the top performer when it comes to feedback either.
They don't do it well.
There have been teams I've been a part of where it's, we use feedback in the same way we do in the corporate setting, where it's either get better or your spot's gone.
Yeah.
Right. So there are pros and cons to both domains. It's just navigating where you're at and what your challenges are.
And I think whether you're receiving feedback or giving feedback, one of the similarities I talk about around peak performance, around leadership, around coaching is whether it's for yourself, knowing when to add pressure, knowing when to take it away, or in the terms of feedback, how am I adding pressure, how am I taking it away? And I heard a coach, somebody sent me this about Mike Elko, about emotional regulation and adding pressure. And he said his job is to be opposite of the moment. And I think that is so brilliant. And whether that's in sports or whether that's in business, how are you showing up in a way that's opposite of the moment? If your team is experiencing this, you got to be able to show up in a different way.
Right.
If they need some pressure, they need motivation, you got to bring the energy. If there's too much, you got to quiet it down. It's kind of how that works together.
And as a manager and as a leader, it's the same principle.
Absolutely.
What do your employees need? What do the people that you're leading need? And it's typically the opposite of how they're showing up.
Yeah, and how are you treating them in a way that allows them to be their best? And I think that's the question I always ask leaders and coaches. Is your team winning because of you or in spite of you? And how are you using feedback? And how are you opening yourself to feedback? Are you humbling yourself enough to receive the feedback? Yeah, good. Okay, what's another way that they transfer?
One thing I'm big on, discipline. Consistency. I think that you look at success in either domain, the discipline is there. The high performers in the athletic setting, the high performers in the corporate setting, they typically are very disciplined and have a structure in line with their process, right? So going back to the first one is, do you have a process, but then are you disciplined enough to carry out that process in the face of barriers and obstacles?
Yeah, and so to me, back to that self-management, I can stay focused, I can stay disciplined there's a lot of days I don't let my feelings control my processes or my decisions. I may not feel like doing it, but because I have the discipline, because I have a greater purpose, because I'm a part of something bigger, I'll sacrifice what I feel in the moment for something that I want most. And I think that's what successful people tend to do.
It
is they know what they want, and they know what they're willing to give up to get it.
Yes. We talk a lot about habits and the formation of productive and healthy habits that are going to move you towards your goals. And that's exactly what it is. Whether it's, again, an athlete or in the corporate setting, it's having habits that move you towards your goals.
Yeah. And so I think one other thing that we find very common in high performance environments is a high performer is creating an environment that maximizes strengths and minimize weaknesses. And I think what coaches do a great job of, whether they're recruiting or now the transfer portal or whether it's in a professional team, is they create an environment that maximizes strengths and minimize weaknesses, and they adjust and adapt to the team that they have. And that's corporate America.
Absolutely.
Right? Your job as a leader is to engineer the environment that maximizes your strengths, maximizes strength, and minimize weaknesses.
Right.
And that's what creates an environment to win. And too many times, I think, in sports and in business, we focus too much on weaknesses.
Right. Yeah, that brings to mind the verbiage we use in both domains of recruiting, right? You're being recruited as an athlete for a team based off of your strengths, the value you bring to a team. And then now in the corporate world, you're being hired by a recruiter. Somebody is recruiting you. And what are they looking for?
Yeah.
Strengths to fit what will increase the company's revenue, strengths that will increase productivity and match the culture. And that's huge.
Yeah, I guess Jim Collins' work has been so profound in my work as a performance psychologist or a human being. But in sports or in corporate America, we talk about the first rule of thumb is get the right people on the bus. And so back to what we talked about with emotional intelligence, and it's not about talent. What did Calvin Coolidge say? There's nothing more common than unsuccessful people with talent. Yeah. And it's more about what's the fit.
Right.
And how do you create that fit? And I think, to be honest, probably athletes in sports do a better job of recruiting and finding the best fit and finding the best talent than corporate America does in that piece.
Yeah.
So those are skill sets that we think help you perform at a high level. And
Yes.
like, here's the arena that I'm playing. What are some of the common things we see that doesn't help, whether it's in sports or in corporate America? What are the things that don't do too well?
The outwork everyone mentality.
Yep.
I'm just going to work harder than everyone else around me, and that's going to get me to the top seat at the table, right? And that's just, it's not helpful, and oftentimes it doesn't work. It just leads to burnout.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I think that effort is something we believe is a key to success, but the
Yes.
right effort,
The
doing
right
the
effort,
right things.
motivated by the right sources.
Yeah, and knowing how to engage and disengage.
Correct.
And I think, one of the things that we talk about with that effort is recovery and rest.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Layer said, and he was the first sports psychologist turned corporate psychologist that I remember reading about, and he said, we live in a world that celebrates work and productivity, ignores renewal and recovery, and fail to recognize that both are necessary for peak performance.
I couldn't agree more.
And so where do you think, we'll kind of go back. Who does it better, you think?
I think athletes do it better, quite frankly. And I know that's a little bit contradictory to maybe my line of research saying that I'm prioritizing athlete rest. But I think when it comes to especially their physical rest, they do it much better. And that's the main energy expenditure for them.
Yeah.
So, we have things in place, very set procedures for how many hours a week they have to be off of practices, how many times they need to go see their athletic trainer and go to rehab or whatever that looks like for them.
We have a whole applied science lab with, I was talking about Alex Bina, who runs that for us at Clemson Football. And he's like, we have more visits this year than ever before.
Right.
So athletes are doing a better job, at least being aware of the physical recovery.
The physical recovery, and now hopefully leaning more into the mental side of recovery as well, and emotional. I think when we look at corporate America, rest is just really not something that's valued, maybe, or
no, it's dismissed.
It's very much so. It's
to
dismissed
me, it's
as
pride
lazy.
in how hard are you working.
Yes,
it's pride in busyness.
Mm-hmm.
It's pride in how. I mean, and I'll be completely honest. It's one of the things I don't love about what I've created for my life is I hear it all the time, and my children will say it as well. Dad, you're the busiest guy I know. And it's not something I take pride in, but it's something that's been a part of my life that I learned my whole life, which has helped me find some quote unquote success.
Right.
But it also comes at a cost.
It does.
And athletes understand that. It's ingrained that you have to have rest and recovery for your body to be, even in swimmers, they have to taper down.
Right.
You have to be mindful of that for peak performance. But I don't think corporate America understands it very well.
I think because the side effects or repercussions aren't as visible. Whereas with an athlete, if you don't prioritize your physical recovery, you're going to get injured. You're going to tear something or have to sit out. Whereas, if you're coming to work exhausted, mentally fatigued, drained, you can't necessarily see that. We drink coffee, we do
or
whatever.
You drink alcohol.
Yeah.
You might wear your Apple Watch or your Fitbit or your Whoop, but you weren't really paying attention to that. And I think, I'm doing a lot of work right now in the area of physician well-being, and the research is pretty profound about significant levels of burnout and exhaustion and divorce and depression. And those are all signs of burnout. I just did some continuing education. I need to go find the author's name, but a physician wrote a book called When the Body Says No. And his question for us, what is the body saying no to that you will not?
Yeah. There's another great book that I like for this. It's The Body Keeps Score, right?
Yeah.
And that's a great one, talking about how you just go. You're experiencing stress, trauma, demands constantly. And maybe you're able to push through it, but at some point, your body's going to break down and you won't be able to anymore. But it's fascinating to me.
Yeah. And so that we're going to outwork you, right? That isn't going to get you by. What else do we see as a common struggle?
The win-loss thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's, we've got in sports the scoreboards. It's either you're ahead or you're behind, and same thing with a sales position, right? Either you're meeting quotas or you're not, and there is some clarity there, but there's also some ambiguity as well. Yeah,
we keep score.
Yeah.
We're in a performance-based world, and I think part of our job is to kind of help people be in this world, but not defined by it, not of it, but they keep score in sports and they keep score in business. I mean, every sales meeting I've gone to, they'll put a spreadsheet up with and you got green, yellow, red. Who's above the plan and who's below the plan. Well, at the end of the game, the scoreboard doesn't lie about who won the game. And so one of my favorite things to do that we bring to corporate America, one of my favorite questions to ask, no matter what role or arena, I love that language, Gabby, is how do you define success? And if your success is based on achieving a goal or based on a score or based on hitting a number, you're going to always fall short. You may grab temporary feelings of success, but if that's your only metric, I think the scoreboard and winning and hitting your plan and hitting your number are a byproduct of your effort, a byproduct of your success, a byproduct of your mindset, a byproduct of your culture, not the root cause or determination.
I couldn't agree more. And that kind of goes into the third one, which is the control illusion.
Yes.
Which keeping score gives you an illusion of control, right? And you're like, well, I just need to make one more sale to hit target, and I can do that. I have control of that. But it's really not the case in sports or in corporate.
Yeah, or even, go back to my physician work, that the stages of well-being in physician research right now is really interesting. It says that at one point they were deity-like status, and now they're went to hero-like status, and now we're finally giving them permission to be human. And that devotion that I've shared on here before with my wife, who shared with me the devotion that the title was Great Husbands Make Poor Gods. And I think that illusion of control, that especially success and the hubris of success, whether that's in sports or business, that leads me to think I can control the outcome. I can influence. Look what I've done. And we dismiss other people's contributions, or we dismiss that, we may have just gotten lucky in that process.
Right.
Okay, what have we not covered? Hopefully we've made it a pretty good argument. I feel like we have, but of course I'm biased. I've been doing this for a long time. What needs to be said that hasn't been said, or what are some takeaways from our conversation today?
Well, I think we said pretty comprehensively a good framework for understanding the overlaps between the two and the differences as well. It's such a fascinating conversation for me right now because of where I'm coming in with AMPLOS, and majority of my experience previously being in the sports world and now getting a taste of the corporate setting and getting to...
So what have you learned? This is a good, what have you learned and what have you seen? I know we've talked about some of that today, but...
Yeah, it's been great kind of seeing the transferability, and, I knew about it, but now seeing it really transfer. And I will say, the feedback piece has been one of the ones that sticks out the most to me, and then discipline and habits in the conversations I've had, in the meetings I've been a part of. And it's just, it's something that I didn't expect fully, if I'm being transparent. And I was honestly quite worried coming in. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do going from sports to corporate.
Yeah.
And now being in it, I'm like, wow, there's a need, and it's very similar to what you're doing with athletes. And so it's kind of cool seeing it firsthand.
Yeah, I think that, so we talk about a lot of corporate America thinking, biased. And what I hear is a lot of sports psychologists maybe being biased as well.
Yeah.
It's like, it
goes both ways.
But I love that it's been kind of an eye-opening and encouraging. And I think that's what I'll kind of end with is people love to look at the neat opportunities we've had, and those are primarily they see in the world of sports. And they always love to ask me, who do you love working with the most? And to me, my answer is the same, and it doesn't matter what you do. But if your organization or you exhibit these three qualities, curiosity, are you curious? Are you asking questions? Are you want to improve? We aren't who you are. We aren't the company for you if you're just kind of, satisfied. You don't want to grow. You don't want to learn. You don't want to get better. You want to keep doing what you've always done, which may have worked for you. Some humility, realize you don't have all the answers. We don't either. And then some passion around what you do. And so that's what I get excited about. That's what inspires me, is working with people who want to find that harmony between their work and their life, between their well-being and their performance, the true desire to be better and pursue better, regardless of the arena that you're playing in.
Yeah. And that's one thing that's really stuck out to me is going from sports to corporate is people want to enjoy what they're doing. People don't want to wake up and hate going to their job. They don't want to wake up and dread what their day looks like. So finding ways to use that wellness wheel and help them, learn how to balance or find that harmony that we talk about has been honestly a very rewarding thing to be a part of so far.
You've been a blessing to be a part of it. So challenge yourself. If you're an executive listening to this, or you're in the corporate world, or if you're a stay-at-home parent, challenge yourself. Hey, what can I maybe learn from the sports world? Where can I improve with some of the things we mentioned? Or if you're in the sports world and think, okay, where can I get a little bit better in some of these areas? Where can I really grow? How can my maturity match my talent? How am I taking care of myself in such a way to help me be who I want to be and accomplish what I want to accomplish? And so, hey, give us your ideas, give us your suggestions. Where do you see the similarities? Where do you see the differences? Don't forget about the worksheet. And if you are kind enough and like what you hear, please, is it follow us or like us? I get confused.
Can be a follow on YouTube, can be a like on Spotify, I believe, or subscription on Spotify. Subscribe on Spotify.
Subscribe. And that just helps us get our message out that we hope is relevant in your life. And so until next time, we look forward to hearing about you being better and pursuing better.
Yeah. Thank you.